Well, good morning, everyone, and I guess good afternoon to those joining from the East Coast. We are excited to be have you join us this morning. We have a great group of panelists and really timely topic for our second in the series of QRP Insight webinars. Before we get started, I want to go through a couple of quick housekeeping notes. First, I do want to let everyone know that we will be recording today's webinar, so you can all expect to receive, if you've registered, receive a link to this webinar recording within a few days. And then also, I do want to invite you to put questions into the Q&A area. If you go to the bottom center of your screen, you should see an icon for Q&A. And please post any questions you have for either of our panelists in that Q&A list. And at the end of this webinar, we will do our best to get to as many of those questions as possible. Today's topic focuses on how insurance brokers are leveraging AI and other technologies to drive efficiencies and effectiveness in their operations. We'll also share some real-world examples today of how InsurTech companies are enabling those transformations for brokers. My name is Jeff Saunders. I will be your moderator today. I've formerly worked as an executive in personal lines brokerage at both Goosehead Insurance and at Gallagher. And I currently work as an advisor to both InsurTech companies, insurance brokers. We have two panelists joining us today. Our first panelist is Gino Bonacci, and Gino is the Chief Operating Officer of personal lines and small business at Gallagher, and Evan Groot, and Evan is the Global Go-to-Market Director of Insurance at Salesforce. So they'll be able to give you great perspectives, both from the perspective of an agency principal who's running a large agency operation, and from the InsurTech perspective from a company that's doing some really cool and groundbreaking work that you'll hear about today. If you do have, as I mentioned, questions, please post those at the bottom. And before we jump into the webinar itself, I'd like to introduce Ken Holmes of QuinStreet to tell us a little bit about our sponsor for today's webinar. Ken?
Awesome, Jess. Thank you very much. Yes, we're sponsoring today and very excited to have the panelists aboard. I'll tell you a little bit about QuinStreet and then get it back to you. So at QuinStreet, we've been at the forefront of digital innovation, committing to connecting consumers with brands through advanced performance marketplace solutions for more than a quarter of a century now. Our industry-leading segmentation and AI-driven matching technologies aim to help consumers find better solutions while enabling brands to target and reach in-market customers with precision. A testament to this commitment is QuinStreet Rating Platform, QRP. We're a groundbreaking and intuitive rating platform that empowers insurance agencies to better serve their customers. QRP has been strongly embraced by insurance carriers and agencies, with many reporting that time to quote and bind a policy has decreased by 30% or more over existing older legacy technology solutions. Differentiators in QRP include end-to-end bind capability, single point of data entry for agents, integration flexibility, comprehensive data analytics and reporting, and right in line with today's topic, AI-powered user experiences that help drive greater conversion rates for agencies. So, Jeff, really looking forward to the discussion today. Happy to be the sponsor, and back to you to get us started.
Yeah, thank you, Ken. Thank you again for sponsoring. So before we turn it over to our panelists, just want to help frame up the conversation today and put into context what you'll be hearing from Gino and from Evan. There's no doubt for all of you that are joining us that are principals at an insurance brokerage, maybe leaders at a carrier, at an MGA, across our industry, we're going through a very transformational time. Obviously, you're all familiar with very market-driven transformations we're dealing with as carrier capacity shifts around the country, as catastrophic risks increase, as hard markets prevail. That's providing a lot of challenges in its own right. But at the same time, we've got all of these changing tides of technology and artificial intelligence and other things that are coming along that could have application in your businesses. And in any period of great change and transformation in an industry, there's always going to be winners and losers. And so part of our hope today is to expose all of you to some of what's going on and how it's being deployed across the industry, and hopefully position you all to be on the winning side of the equation. brokers that are looking to transform their businesses uh, really have to take, in my opinion, more of an all-in approach, given how transformational and disruptive this change is, as opposed to just looking at small incremental changes to their business model. So what does that look like? An all-in approach to transforming into sort of the age of AI means looking for ways to drive improve productivity, improve customer and employee experiences, and reducing risks throughout the enterprise and across all of your primary core business processes: new business, customer service, reporting analytics, et cetera. And as you look to deploy technology to achieve these business objectives, it must be done in a way that is supported by your organizational and role designs and your business process design, many of which in both organization and process probably will need to be rethought as you think about the ways that AI will impact your business. Because the traditional role definitions and the jobs that you needed 5 years ago may be very different than the kinds of jobs and roles that you'll need in your organization going forward as these technologies come to play. So keep that in mind. Again, we will be focusing a lot of today's talk on the technology part of this transformation, but it's very important to think about how those technology investments should be driven by well-defined business objectives and aligned with those organization and process designs. So if you're joining us today, hoping to learn more about AI and how it's being used, and because you are either currently deploying AI or thinking about ways to do so, you're in good company. As this graphic shows, Salesforce commissioned a study, this is actually back in mid-year 2023, of 105 insurance industry executives to understand how they are either currently using AI in their enterprise, or if they intend to start using different AI applications in the next 12 or 13 plus months. And so you'll see sort of by the gradients of green in this chart that almost every, or I'd say the vast majority of respondents were either already using or intended to soon begin using different AI use cases throughout their enterprise. Keeping in mind that this study was done now almost 2 years ago, before the advent of ChatGPT and all of the other sort of mainstream AI applications that people now use in their day-to-day life, you can only imagine, in the spirit of St. Patrick's Day yesterday, how much more green this chart would be if this survey was updated today. The bottom line is you're not alone. Almost every executive in this industry feels that imperative to find ways to be understanding and deploying AI. So the key takeaway here is that it's really important for you as whether you're an insurance broker or a carrier or an MGA leader, to educate yourself about how AI is being deployed in the industry and how your firm needs to take action or risk getting left behind by more proactive competitors. So with that, I'd like to introduce our first panelist, Gino Bonacci. And Gino, if you can start by telling us a little bit about yourself and about this transformational journey that you've been on with Gallagher over the past 6 years.
Excellent. Happy to, Jeff. Welcome, everybody, and I'm very excited to be here. First, I just want to thank Quinn Street for hosting this. They've been a fantastic partner of ours, and also very excited to be presenting with Evan, who's a thought leader in our industry, and Salesforce is just another great partner for Gallagher for many, many, many years. Just quickly on myself, I've been in the industry almost 25 years. First as a consultant, management consultant, worked across the country, many large and medium-sized carriers as a consultant. And I went into the carrier world. I had the privilege of working across the insurance value chain from sales to claims and everything in between. And the last 9 years I've spent at Gallagher. And prior to, actually up until December 31st, I ran our personal lines division. And then in January, had the opportunity to take an expanded role for both small business and personal lines, running our service, operations, and transformation groups. So excited to be in this role, but today specifically going to talk about personal lines and our journey there. So Jeff, on the next slide, our journey in personal lines really focused on 4 main pillars. And I joined this journey about 7 years ago when I met Jeff and had the opportunity to work with him in his role, leading the personal lines strategy definition, the work. And our first focus was really around nationalizing the business. The business sat in the commercial branches, and it was very profitable, growing through mergers, but it was shrinking organically. So the first task was to pull it all together under one set of leadership team, people who understood the business, who knew the business, and really could give life and direction and coaching to our people. The second thing that we focused on was standardizing service. And really, that was an operating model change. And it was about building fit for purpose processes and tools that our personal lines teams could use, specifically for a high volume, fast paced business. Part of that was also about building specific back office teams to support the personal line specifically. And then to build, again, the tools and processes to help through that. The third pillar was around revitalizing sales. As you can imagine, there wasn't a lot of producers associated with this business when it sat in the commercial branches. And we really had to build a sales and marketing engine pretty much from scratch. So that had a lot to do with hiring the right people, getting the right leaders in place who could manage a fast-paced sales environment, building processes and fit-for-purpose tools to support that type of an environment, getting standards and how we went to market, how we approach sales, how we approach centers of influence. And then that really led into the last one, which is around technology, data, and advanced analytics to support that. We'll get into that a little bit later, but specifically, we built a Salesforce specific for personal lines. We also went out and partnered with QuinStreet and QRP for a comparative rater as well as a customer journey. And then we integrated those systems to provide a seamless interaction for our customers and our agencies. Then we also now that we had all of the data in one place, we invested in analytics. We hired people who knew how to use that data, how to generate those insights, but most importantly, how to get those insights into the hands of the people who can use them to generate results. And the results of that transformation were kind of speak for themselves. We were able to more than double our Net Promoter Score results. We were able to go from a detractor on organic growth for Gallagher to a contributor on organic growth. And we were able to maintain our best-in-class retention in probably one of the hardest markets over the last couple of years that I think we have all seen. So it wasn't easy. It was a multi-year effort, but it was comprehensive in its totality. And the great news is that it was driven and supported by technology and our partners on this call.
Right. Thank you so much, Gino, for sharing that brief overview of your transformation story. I'm sure you'll probably get some more questions and an opportunity to dig deeper into that as we go forward. And now I'd like to introduce our second panelist, Evan Groot of Salesforce. And Evan, same to you. If you can tell us a little bit about yourself and share a little bit about sort of Salesforce's journey and how it's built solutions for insurance brokers over the years.
Well, in typical Salesforce fashion, I will also start with a thank you. Thank you to QuinStreet for sponsoring this. Jeff, thanks for moderating. Gino, thanks for being a wonderful customer and partner. And thank you for all the other customers and prospective customers that joined to listen to us today. My journey started as a broker in a PNC in Series 6, 7. So I've been in an agency in distribution, ran distribution for a large carrier here, and then called on independent agencies. But I've been here at Salesforce for 5 years, working across our largest brokers and our carrier partners as well. And it's been an exciting journey. So 8 years ago, Salesforce endeavored on an industry-first approach. And we launched what is called, and still is called, Financial Services Cloud. And that was focused on banking, wealth, and most importantly, insurance. And over my 5 years, we've really seen that mature where there's now line of business specific. There's specific data models for group benefits and for PNC. And the most exciting innovation and the most relevant to this call is we've gone one step further where there's actually now Financial Services Cloud specific for insurance brokers. So we heard our customers, over 60% of the top 100 firms are customers of Salesforce, and they heard we really need something industry specific so we can go deeper into the operations space. So that's what we built. If you go to the next slide, Jeff, we really pulled together the best around collaboration, managing analytics. You heard Gino talk a little bit about that. And most importantly, connecting sales and service. For too long, people would do some work in a CRM, some work in a bespoke AMS, and some work in multiple other systems. But how do we begin to connect both sales and service on a common platform for the brokerage community, right? And we do that through the new brokerage data model that just went GA. The other piece is building some of those out-of-the-box industry-specific workflows. So in the path to accelerate innovation and adoption within it, we're pre-building those things very specifically for both sales and service applications. And the last really exciting piece, I know the topic du jour today is Agentforce. And last year we pioneered agentic AI. So that is the ability for AI not just to do summarization and some of the cool things you see ChatGPT do, but actually go out and take actions and invoke those workflows you've already created in the platform. So if you go one step further, we like to think about that from a persona-driven approach. And because of QuinStreet's relationship in the quoting, I chose just to talk about the digital sales support agent. So for those of you on the phone, and what Gino already called out, you're looking to drive organic growth within your organization. Either you're a large firm trying to drive organic growth in agents you've acquired, or you're an agent that is still independent that wants to grow your overall EBITDA. And so a digital support agent would work alongside your producers. It would streamline them preparing for meetings. It would quickly wrap up and summarize the meetings. It'd identify upsell and cross opportunities, schedule meetings, all of these things it could actually do on behalf. So you take the low value tasks off theirs and allow them to focus on the human engaged elements like building relationships, which ultimately drives to the values and outcomes. They're going to sell more. They're going to be able to have more conversations, and they're going to be able to grow revenue for both themselves and for the firm. So on the next slide, the last and newest piece, and we won't, actually one more slide. Yep. The journey is really about connecting the sales and service, right? And so this is the new service offering. And this is targeting some of the capabilities that you would traditionally do in an AMS. So client account management, including a full service counsel, property and casualty policy management. So this is everything after you win the BOR to actually service it, including getting downloads of data into the system to be able to use a single system of engagement. Really deep in the employee management space, a lot of our pioneer customers have actually started in the EB business. And finally, doing the middle and back office capabilities you traditionally had to think about an AMS for, like commissions and revenue management. So lots of good resources out there. But this is the bedrock for actually empowering AI because you have all the data in a common platform. And you can also connect data in other systems to it. That is sort of the bedrock for being able to do AI in insurance brokerage.
Thanks, Evan, for that introduction. Wow, there's a lot of very cool stuff going on at Salesforce. And for sure, you guys have been a leader in figuring out not only ways to build the more bespoke solutions for the brokerage market, but how to help brokers think about bringing AI into the fold. So I'm sure we'll unpack that over the course of our talk today. So we're going to move on into a few specific topics I'd like to have both of you dig a little more deeply into. And let's start with the topic of new business, specifically looking at ways that brokers are leveraging technology to improve the efficiency and effectiveness of their new business processes. Both of you have already referred to this topic a bit in your opening comments around, Gino, how part of that transformation journey at Gallagher you talked about and included, both the technology aspects with QRP and Salesforce and some of the hiring practices and other business changes that wrapped around that. And Evan just talked about some of the ways that kind of that sales agent of the future can be sort of digitally enhanced by an AI buddy that's helping them take some of those tasks off their plate. So Gino, let's start with you. Can you lead us off by sharing some of the ways that Gallagher has been leveraging technology to help really drive that improved productivity in your new business processing? And that can be both from, as the sort of the sales funnel graphic shows on this chart, all the way from lead generation through the final steps of perfecting a policy, downloading, setting up an AMS, and everything in between. So, Gino?
Absolutely. Happy to, Jeff. So from the way that we thought about this problem at Gallagher is really in two veins. One is anything that we built had to make it easy for the producer, which means we had to eliminate duplicate entry, and it had to be streamlined for them so that they could really get to first call close. The second thing that we really tried to focus on is making sure that we had a solution that met customers where they wanted to be met. And we know that almost 90% of customers start their buying journey online. But we also know that today less than 10% purchase a homeowner's policy online and less than 20% purchase an auto policy online. So we wanted the solution that we built to be able to, again, meet customers digitally, but also then invoke the human side of this where we needed to. And as we went down that path, the first thing we did was a personalized specific version of Salesforce that allowed us to manage leads, opportunities, and centers of influence and keep all that information together. Use the power of Salesforce to generate the insights and data for our frontline to help manage the funnel and help our producers stay on track. And then we went out with a pretty robust RFP, and we looked at the customer experience, the employee experience, the ability to integrate with our technology stack, the support that we would provide, and a few other things as we went through it. And as we went through that RFP, there was a clear winner through that process for us, and that was QuinStreet and QRP. And we selected them for a couple of reasons. One was the simplicity of the user interface and their customer journey. The second thing was the ability to fully integrate QuinStreet with Salesforce, and then which allowed us then to eliminate that duplicate entry and have the data go back and forth between Salesforce and QuinStreet. And then the last thing was really just the support that they provided. QuinStreet has been a fantastic partner, not just a technology provider, but truly a thought partner in solving our problems and helping us advance that. And that was really important to us as we selected the vendor. And so from that standpoint, that is where we landed on a technology stack. The next part of that then was providing, again, those insights, using the data, using the tools that Salesforce provides to be able to manage the execution of the process and making sure that we understood the types of leads we were getting, what was beneficial, how making sure we're maximizing those leads. And Salesforce provides all of the capabilities to help us manage through that process.
Thank you, Gino. Evan, as we heard from Gino, Salesforce is an important part of the story at Gallagher and how they're able to drive some efficiencies, drive better insights and analytics. Can you kind of build on Gino's comments and speak a little more to how the latest iteration of Financial Services Cloud for insurance brokers, in your opinion, is going to help brokers further streamline their new business processes?
Yeah, absolutely. Gallagher is a great example of what good looks like for this space. And it's a number of things. So it's connecting, marketing, right? Ahead of lead and opportunity management is number one. Number two, Gino hit it. It's connecting and being able to do that full journey, right? So if you think about just the lead and opportunity management and marketing, that's the front end of the funnel. And I love the kind of illustration you have here, Jeff. Then in the middle office, making sure you can connect to a system where people can do it without having to go. It's intuitive. They can use it like QuinStreet is incredibly important, both for the agent experience, so it's easy for them to do it, but also the customer on the other end who's interacting with that agent, right? And that's how you're going to drive differentiation and growth. In Financial Services Cloud, using the industry-specific data model, you can now track policy data back to the customer. So instead of having a policy-centric system, you now have a customer-centric system. So when the person is engaging the consumer on the phone, they can see a 360 of them. That's the Salesforce bread and butter, but they can now also see other policies they hold in that deeper kind of view of the data model. They can also see any service interactions that may have had. They can surface insights around next best action. And most importantly, they can launch agentic-driven interactions with those consumers, right? So the agent can be doing things on their behalf. It can be pulling in data, which just allows them to have a more quality conversation and a higher overall conversion ratio.
Good stuff. Thank you both. Good insights there on the roles that your technology can play. We've also seen on this chart just some other examples of technology use cases for how you might think about not just AI, but other technologies enhancing each of these stages of the sales cycle. So now that you've got the new business in, you have to service these clients. And so we're going to pivot now to the topic of leveraging technology to streamline customer service. Gino, you spoke in your comments earlier about how you had to transform your customer service function as part of making personal lines, a more national practice at Gallagher, and how you further differentiated your model between different client segments. Can you speak to the role in a little more detail of how technology has helped you drive down the cost to serve, while at the same time improving customer experience? Because both of those things, while they can tend to kind of have friction of pulling it apart, you can either have a low cost or high service. I think all of us that have been in the brokerage business recognize you really need a way to do both. You need to be more productive and drive down cost to serve. But from the perspective of your clients, they should feel like the most important person in the world to you and your agency, and have no reason to ever look elsewhere because of the excellent experience they're getting. And so can you maybe comment around how Gallagher has approached that?
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned the Holy Grail, right, Jeff? The do it great and do it cheaper. Those are that's hard to do, but it's very doable if you leverage technology. But I guess I would start by saying that it's not just technology. And your slide at the beginning, Jeff, was I think a great illustration of the holistic approach that you have to take. It's process, it's people, and it's technology, and it's data. And my approach has always been, and I think I learned this early in the consulting days, you don't automate a bad process. So I would encourage anybody who's going to go through a journey to start with process and make sure that the processes are effective and efficient before you start. Jeff, you mentioned segmentation. It's also important that we started with the customer and we looked at what the customer expected. My mantra has kind of always been meet the customer when, where, and how they expect to be serviced. That's really important as well to make sure that you're not over investing for customers who don't want that level of service, and you're not under investing for customers who do, and making sure that you get that balance correct. From our perspective, it was really, we really went about it in three phases. The first was, as I mentioned, the process, understanding what does the customer want, what do we need to add, what do we need to eliminate, what do we need to automate, and then what do we need to maybe offshore. The second part of that then was how do you take advantage of whatever agency management system that you're using, and making sure that you're leveraging the tools that you have. And so that was a big part for us, was making sure that the tools were fit for purpose for personal insurance, as well as for private client, and making sure that we were using what we had to begin with. And then the second part of that, the third part of that then was how do you augment that for the customer? Again, meeting them where they want to be, with whether that's a customer portal, whether that's with bringing in and being able to coordinate all of your emails, your phone, whatever communication vehicle, pulling that all together. And then where we're headed on the fourth journey is exactly what Evan said now, is how do you get sales and service on a common platform? And that's kind of the next evolution for us as we move through this. But it's really important from a service perspective that you have right process, you have fit for purpose tools, you have the insights that you need and get those to the front line. And then, like I said, just making sure that everybody has the same view of the customer.
Thanks for those comments, Gino. I think, yeah, it really resonated what you said there around trying to integrate sales and service into a common platform. I think, historically, there's been almost a firewall in a lot of brokers between their agency management system, where they service their clients, and their CRM or quoting engines, where most of the sales activities occur. And I think, as this graphic that you can all see on your screen now illustrates, customers don't see us that way. Customers see, I have an insurance agent and they take care of all my needs. They don't compartmentalize their agents into different sort of functional buckets, as we kind of tend to do internally. And so part of this transformation and thinking about technology really has to think about, how do we make this sort of seamless infinity loop, as it's shown here, where your sales experience you're having as a client just flows seamlessly into the service experience and back, as you need new policies, additional coverage, that they should really be well integrated. And that is really hard to do if you're not all operating out of the same systems environment. So thank you for pointing that out. And I think, Evan, that's a good transition for you, that, Gino referenced, even with the great work they're doing at Gallagher, big brokers have a lot of different tools in place, a lot of technologies, legacy systems, new systems, and they all serve a purpose. But oftentimes it's hard to get them to talk together. And then you don't have one source of data. You don't have one source of the truth. You have, unfortunate opportunities to have data mismatched in different systems, or staff doing duplicative work. So can you maybe speak a little bit to how Salesforce is helping brokers deal with some of these types of frictions and inefficiencies, and how the new financial services cloud might help further that?
Yeah, absolutely happy to pick up there. And, I think the two go together, right? We were talking about driving organic growth. The number one way to drive organic growth is to stop it from going out on the back end. And to your point, Jeff, customers don't differentiate on the sales experience versus the service experience versus the moment of truth claims experience. To them, it's just the experience that they have with the agency. And they want to have that, be positive through the entire life cycle. And you both said it. I think one of the most important pieces is data, right? And so certainly moving forward and having a common platform between the two is a big piece of what we have, but there's still going to be data that persists in our systems. Almost every large broker and even some of the smaller brokers have an enterprise data strategy of some kind, where there's a data lake, either that's formal or informal. And being able to unlock that trapped data and those insights and surface that in the system of engagement, that's an innovation called Data Cloud. So we have the data model that sits in Financial Services Cloud, but being able to view, utilize, do analytics and action data that persists in other systems was another big innovation that allows brokerages to do that and maybe persist where there aren't some systems where you can do everything in one. So there's a lot of people that are engaging it that way. The other thing that I heard, and I think that's really important, is meeting your customers where they're at. You both said it. And I feel like having an omni-channel experience, having your digital property, having people call in, and then lowering the energy when you switch. One of the biggest use cases was when somebody switches a channel, not having to re-authenticate or begin the conversation again, because that's when frustration happens, right? So one of the really early AI use cases is just summarizing a chat that was happening and giving the CSR it. The other big use of AI is just around knowledge management, either summarizing or pulling the knowledge relevant to answer the question in the service, or even predicting as somebody starts to open a case or doing that, the relative knowledge that may help that person servicing the end customer be able to answer that question quicker. And all of that we see reduces the lower average handle time. So it's about how do you do it cheaper, right? So it's being able to do it quicker and less time for the CSR. And then that's a better experience that also is more empathetic because you're able to go faster, right? And drive a better experience. So you're on both sides of that. And then as you control the cost of those operations, those are additional resources you can then invest. So if you think about Salesforce first, we were the first really big, giant enterprise agent force customer. And now we have over 360,000 things being responded by an agent, right? So when somebody goes to salesforce.com and responds, they're actually interacting with one of these live agents. That's allowed us to handle and hire more than 1,000 employees to focus on sales and distribution, right? So all of those things kind of come together to drive this infinity wheel.
Thanks, Evan. You've already started to touch on kind of our next topic in your comments there around how AI can be leveraged to drive kind of that next level of reporting and analytic insights. We also heard Gino reference before just some of the challenges associated with different pools of data existing around the enterprise. And that's particularly difficult with brokers and MGAs that are using legacy AMSs for kind of their transactional operations and service operations, a different CRM system, maybe a different quoting engine, maybe some other kind of point tools that exist. Large brokers certainly have the option of creating these data pools, these data lakes, warehouses, whatever term you want to use, and layering, Power BI or other types of reporting on top of that. That's highly expensive and complex to do, to build it, to maintain it, and doesn't always allow for an easy evolution path because of all of the APIs and connections. It's very easy to break. And when that next version of something comes along. And so it's a solution that I'm guessing a lot of our participants use, but not an ideal one. So maybe you can just kind of continue on down that thread of how Salesforce can help drive kind of a more harmonious environment and leverage a single source of data with AI tools.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to unpack that. And so with the solution, you heard me mention at the top, talking about analytics, there are embedded reports directly within the CRM tool that were pre-configured to be specific to insurance use cases. And so right out of the gate, you have analytics you can turn on and drive on platform data. The other big piece is capturing other data that comes from QuinStreet. So capturing the data that you have in a quote and matching that to your lead and opportunity management and your service data, that's all in a common platform. So you're not having to build out the separate data lake as you described. The other really interesting piece is the ability not only to get these great visualizations that show where you're having success by line of business or by distribution partner or by geography, but being able to actually interrogate the data in natural language. So if you see something in the data and you say, well, why is that happening? Right? Why do we have more premium being written in Michigan versus Ohio? Little play on football there. Um, they what you'll see then is that there's actually 3 times more quotes that are happening in the QuinStreet platform versus what's happening there, right? So it's the activity driving it. So is it a higher buying rate? Is it higher activity? And then maybe even one step further, what's behind that activity? Is there differentiation in the marketing exercises? So it allows really 2 different things. One, it allows the user to get better at what they're doing, to sharpen their skills, to see how the data, their day-to-day activity is impacting results, and then aggregate that at a management level. So putting Gino's hat on from a year ago, he can have amazing visibility into what's happening within the personalized operation, state by state, geo by geo, line of business by line of business, and really get granular in where he wants to make improvements.
Thanks, Evan. Well, it's, thinking about how difficult it is for so many brokers to glean good insight from data. The best you could do historically is just trying to design that perfect query that could yield a report that you could then go pour through and try to find insight. And so it seems almost magical to think about this ability to just ask, almost like with ChatGPT and other tools or Grok, that just ask your data a question in real language and have your data tell you the insight. That's a heck of a jump forward for this industry and the ability for leaders to understand more about their business. So Gino, let me hand it over to you. Obviously, you guys are making a lot of investments and you're heading towards some of this AI-empowered future. But what are some of the ways that you've already been able to leverage dashboards and analytics that have helped you make better decisions and your leadership team make better decisions day to day?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I want to start by just saying ditto to what everything that Evan said, and we want all of that, right? As brokers, and I think this is absolutely the future. And at Gallagher, we've invested pretty heavily in data and analytics. My personal perspective on analytics is you have to find ways to get it to the people who can actually make a difference with it. And so insight generation is great. But if it sits in an ivory tower somewhere or in someone's cubicle, and you can't explain it to someone or you can't get it to the people who can actually generate value from those insights, then you've got a mismatch there. And what I love about what Evan presented and what we've really been focused on is how do you get those insights to the front line? How do you get those to the frontline supervisors, the frontline either service CSRs or producers to leverage those insights in their discussions? And that's been a really big push for me personally in our organization. And we've done that in a number of ways, with Power BI, using the base Salesforce reports that exist. But it's really important, I think, that one, you got to generate the insights. You got to have the horsepower to understand how to generate these. AI will help immensely. And I love the fact, Jeff, like you said, someday we'll ask our data a question, which is pretty interesting to think about. But it's got to get to the hands of the people who can use it, and by that I mean, a producer who can talk about customers like you look like have purchased this, or based on your risk profile, we would recommend this based on the insights that we have. Those types of things are really important, and so I think what Salesforce is doing and what Evan is showing here is really the path forward for data and analytics. It will start to live at the desk in the future, and I think that's going to be a really cool place to be for people that are going to have these tools at their fingertips.
Great stuff. Thank you both for those comments. So for our final topic, I'd like to have a little bit of fun here and ask you both to sort of put your futurist hats on. It's amazing to think how quickly technology has been moving these last couple of years. If you think about the adoption curve for different technologies that have come along over the decades, every new technology seems to get adopted faster than the last. And AI has really set the bar in just how fast people have adopted using ChatGPT and other types of AI tools day to day. So it's hard to even think about where this is going in 2 years, but I'm going to ask you to look out even further than that. And so the question is, imagine you're leading a best-in-class brokerage in the year 2030, so 5 years out into the future. Share for us your vision of what's that look like? What does a best-in-class brokerage look like? And whatever aspects that where you want to take that 5 years from now. And I'm going to fold in one of the questions from the audience here. Somebody asked earlier how all of these changes will affect the actual devices that your people will need to carry to do their jobs. Is it going to shift more from desktop to laptops, from laptops to tablets, to having a work-based phone that they're using? So any comments that you might have about how you're thinking about the evolution of the actual devices at the desktop would be helpful too. So Gina, let's start with you.
All right. This is a fun question. And Jeff, I don't know if it's 5 years out. It might be more like 3, as we think about the pace of change, as you mentioned. Things are changing so rapidly. And I actually think we're going to see more change in the next 3 years than we've seen in the last 300 in our industry combined. And when I think about the future of a broker, I really break it down into 3 components. The first is knowledge and accessibility to that knowledge. The second is capacity. And then the third is about advisory services. And so if I just break those down a little bit further, if we think about knowledge and access to knowledge, Gartner recently released a study that they think that by 2028, so 3 years from now, less than 3 years from now, 30% of the Fortune 500 will move from omni-channel service to single channel service. And that single channel will be generative AI driven. And so think about that change and how fast that will happen. But that's really about, and if you, the other, keep going on that study, they also said that 70% of that single channel will be accessed through a mobile device. And so back to your device question, Jeff. And if you think about that, that's not just about an app. That's leveraging digital assistants. So leveraging Google Assist or Siri or Alexa through different devices. And people are going to be able to get to information quickly. They're going to be able to get to information on what they want. They're going to be able to ask the data a question. I love that line, Jeff. And they're going to be able to get that information in real time when they need it. So the question for brokers is, how do you stay relevant in that? Because it's not enough to have the answer. Everybody's going to have the answer. So how does a broker stay relevant in that time and space? The second thing I talked about was capacity. And listen, for our carrier partners that are on the call, we understand that you are going to continue to manage profitability and exposure. And so how do brokers help maybe fill the space there? And so PwC publishes the Future of Insurance Distribution study that they constantly update. And for about a year now, they've been talking about brokers filling the capacity gap. So brokers who have access and partner with MGAs have access to alternative capital and can build proprietary programs to help fill the gap of what we know and what we don't know. Think about all of the risks that didn't exist 5 years ago that exist today, and now just accelerate that 3 years from now, what risks are going to be there that we're going to have to fill in the future. So I think that that's going to be really important. I think technology is going to play a huge part in that, whether that's going to be sensors and understanding what's happening and preventing it before it happens, or being able to respond more quickly because of what we know what's going on, or even AI telling us that something's about to happen and getting there to prevent that from happening. So technology is going to play a big part there as well. And then the last part is really around the advisory services. And so I mentioned earlier about where we are in terms of where customers are shopping versus buying. We all know that's going to change, but I like when I started in consulting in the early 2000s, that was always the US is going to go the way of the UK and everything's going to be online and agencies are going to go away. Well, that was 25 years ago, and brokers are still here dominating the space. And so, I do think that this is always and will always be a relationship business. But how do brokers position themselves in that true advisory services role? We also know that we have an aging population within insurance, myself included in that, and the amount of knowledge that's going to be walking out the door in the next 10 to 15 years is pretty significant. So how do we train the next generation in our industry, and then leverage tools and technology to help them get that knowledge much, much faster and be that advisor? So if I think about, I guess, Jeff, to answer your question in summary, it's really about surviving, or not surviving, but being relevant in a digital space where knowledge and access to knowledge is very accessible. It's how do you continue to fill the capacity gap? And then third, it's how do you continue to build the risk advisor of the future?
Good stuff. Thank you, Gino. Yeah, I know it's hard to look 5 years out given how quickly things are changing. But I think you categorized kind of those different kind of mega trends and challenges very well. So thank you for that. So Evan, over to you. You get to put your futuring hat on. You heard kind of Gino's view of what the future looks like. How do you see it?
So I think the way that Gino framed it, right, with those three big rocks, I'm going to respond in that. I'm just going to pick up on kind of where he went, right? So when I think about knowledge and differentiation, first and foremost, it's understanding the institutional knowledge you already have. In these large brokers, there's been so much M&A that it's very difficult to even know what you have with a given carrier, right? Let alone have a 360 that customer across all lines of business, all parts of the organizations, whether personal or other. It's also, there's a lot of knowledge trapped in the brain of the people who've been in the industry for a long time, right? And so your best producers that have maybe been doing this for 30 or 40 years, how do you begin to get that knowledge transferred to the next generation? And I think that connecting the data sources within it is going to become an increasingly part in something called retrieval augmented generation, right? And so that is where you actually train the AI to look at specific parts of the different data. So all of those PDFs and unstructured forms, or all the things that the carriers give you about the product, how do you really know the difference between product A and product B, right? I envision a world real soon where there's comparative selling, where the AI evaluates the two quotes, looks at the differences in the contract, and can give the human in real time. So you're no longer selling just on price alone, but you're selling on the features and functions and benefits, which goes in sort of that advisory track. There's a value add that as an organization you're able to bring to the marketplace and to the consumer. Capacity is a now issue, right? There are carriers leaving marketplaces very, very quickly, and the brokers are where the area of expertise, the underwriting is necessarily held to be able to answer that. And quite frankly, the capital. One of the ways we're responding is the ability to quickly build up new insurance offerings. So a different part of the offering, not necessarily reported for brokers, but for MGAs specifically, is the ability to configure a brand new net new insurance product in as little as 3 months, right? That was 2 years for carriers back in the day. So to be able to identify a need, maybe, orange trees in Florida, right? Or California is going to have all kinds of needs in the future, right? The ability for brokers to sense and respond to market need, but very quickly stand up a scalable platform that they can execute is another piece of what's going to happen. As for the device, that is one of my favorite questions. I think it's going to be voice. When Gino went through his comments, my phone and my Google and everything in my house responded via the voice. But you're going to see more and more voice activation regardless of device. So it could be your laptop. We have today many, many customers with a service cloud voice integration, where they're actually using real-time insights in the call and getting coaching and solid knowledge articles. That's already happening today. Later this year is going to be fully autonomous voice. So if you've seen the Saks Fifth Avenue demo, that is coming to a theater near you for brokerages, where somebody can actually interact with an agent. And I love the Gartner report because they're right. Our whole strategy is you're going to build agentic AI once and deploy many, right? And so what they're saying there by having a common channel is that that agent can solve the same question, whether it's digital, through a voice interaction, if it's being fed through Siri or any other way that it's coming to it, right? And so I like to use the term opti-channel, where the customer can communicate through their preferred channel and still get that consistent experience, and obviously keep it as they're going. And then the last thing I'll just say is that it's going to be the power of one. You know, General Mills is a big customer, Disney is another. But what they really do is understand who you are, right? So if you're watching an episode on Hulu or Disney Plus, and then you go check into a Disney property, they know what episode you left off on, right, within that organization. And I think that when we, from an insurance brokerage community, do that, it's the ability to have those special insights to know our customers across the entire journey, across the marketing journey, how they're interacting with our digital properties, the sales journey, and of course, the service and claims journey, and be really able to communicate in a one-to-one basis, because that's where the consumer expectation is going to go. And, you know, that's kind of where I see it going.
Amazing stuff. You know, I think just to kind of summarize some of your futuring comments, part of what struck me is just not that many years ago, so much of what you guys were saying would go under the category of impossible, right? You just couldn't even have imagined a future where you could do some of these things. And so for all of our attendees, I guess that's one of my challenges is, you know, for you and your leadership teams, be willing to rethink what you might think of as impossible, right? And almost challenge your technology providers with some out there thinking to say, well, the example that that Evan just gave really resonated with me, having run large sales forces. How many times that I had to pound the table to say, please value sell, please value sell. This is not just a price-based sell. But for a lot of producers, it's impossible if you have 50, 60 carriers you're representing to know all the nuances of their policies and what makes them different. It's hard to know what to grab onto. It's daunting. And so this ability to have an AI agent alongside of you that just immediately serves up all of the policy differences and, you know, other pros and cons, maybe claims history and Google reviews, maybe other elements to help compare carrier A to carrier B to empower value selling. That's like magic, and just the idea of the types of things that can come. I also appreciated the comments, and I hope for our participant that asked the question about devices moving to voice. Just to geek out for a second, I had this flash in my mind from Star Trek 4, where they came back from the future to, I think it was the year 2020 or whenever that was, to San Francisco, and Scotty was trying to help this engineer develop the new aluminum. So he goes up to his computer and he picks up the mouse and starts talking to the mouse to give voice commands to the computer. And the confused engineer said, no, you have to type on the keyboard, to which he responded, how quaint, right? And that was intended to just show how far technology was going to go in the Star Trek era. And here we are, Evan talking about it's all going to voice and you won't need the keyboard anymore in a few years. So how quickly things move. And so we do have a few minutes left. I think I've addressed the one question that we had. If you have other questions, these guys are a wealth of information. Great opportunity if you want to chime in and put a question in that Q&A box for either or both of our speakers. I'll give you all a minute. One question I'll pose while we're waiting for Gino or Evan, you can both or either pick up. So if a lot of our attendees are just starting out on a journey for AI and they haven't really started to invest in new things or make changes, what's a good first step? What is kind of those baby steps to start heading in this direction that you'd recommend?
I take the first shot at it, Gino, and I'd love maybe you could add on there. I think the step number one is get started today, right? When you hear this speed, if you're not a little bit alarmed, if you don't feel a little uneasy, you're missing kind of where we're going, right? And I think, Jeff, your question's a good one. How do you get started? And it's by making the no regrets decisions today, right? Look at your platform strategy. It's take a minute from working in your business. You're in sales driven organizations to work on your business, right? And think about, where are we going to go from a platform perspective? How do we connect sales and service within our organization? And then build the muscle, right? Every organization, I've been part of a lot of these agentic AI sales and some of the ones that are publicly referenceable that we talk about. But every one of those skinned their knee with predictive and then learned from generative, right? And then had to go through an entire different level of compliance to do agentic AI. But unless you can learn what it means to do it within your organization and the compliance and governance around it, it'll be very difficult to take advantage of the absolute latest technologies like voice, right? If you've never even done predictive. So start with the no regrets decisions you can do today.
Yeah, Evan, I think you hit it. And I think that your first comment was really important. And if you haven't started, you're already behind. And so, I think that all the things Evan said is a great place to start. Even basic things like pick your AI tool of choice, right? Microsoft's got one, Google's got one, ChatGPT, whatever it is, and start using it. Just start learning what it does and how to use it. Maybe have it help you write an email. Maybe it's help you to read a document for you and summarize it, an article. There are so many ways that you can use AI tools today that are very practical. And if you haven't started or aren't using it, it's time to get started. And I can't remember the stat, Jeff. I think you had it earlier around how fast AI ChatGPT was adopted in the first 30 days. It surpassed, I think, the first 10 years of web usage. And it was just unbelievable how fast people were using the tool. And so, as Evan said, as you start to build out what your future is going to be, I would also suggest you just get started and try to figure out how you can use it in your day-to-day.
Thanks, Gino. We'll squeeze in one more quick question before we wrap. And Evan, this question's for you, and it may be a little bit of a loaded one. I'll let you decide how to take it. But there are, I guess, value-added resellers, I'll call them out there, like Varuna, and I think there are others that have built insurance broker solutions sort of on top of Salesforce, because historically there was no financial services cloud for insurance brokers. So what advice would you give to those brokers that have kind of built out a solution like Varuna?
Yeah, so there are those, the beauty of the Salesforce ecosystem is when there's a market need, it allows those innovators to go very, very quickly and adopt and be able to use them as an AMS. Part of our go-to-market is still to embrace the rich ecosystem of partners that are out there. So there are partners like DocuSign for signature, things that Salesforce doesn't do. And so the partnership and ecosystem, the community is still going to be very important overall. So I think for those who have already gone down that path, if you're already used to the Salesforce ecosystem, you're bringing things into a common platform, and the future is bright for how to do that. And with the investments specifically in the Salesforce product, it's going to be even easier to do so in the future.
Great. Thank you both so much. We are at the top of the hour. Thanks to all of our participants that joined us today. I hope you got good value from listening in. And just again, you will all receive an email link to this webinar in a few days. And thanks again to QuinStreet for being our sponsor today. Have a great rest of your week, everyone. And that's it for the webinar.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.